we are back with another episode of What We Watch When We Drink on the Booze Dancing Entertainment Network. How are we?
We're okay. How about you, Mike?
I'm in the basement on a Sunday afternoon. This is really great.
The last time we talked, I believe there was this big American football game that was going to come on, and you boys are in the Philadelphia area. I didn't see the game myself. I don't watch these big sporting events. You guys had predictions. What were your predictions? I can't remember.
I predicted that the Kansas City Chiefs were going to win 38-35.
Is that right?
I was
that's
spot
amazing.
on, really.
Really?
I make my predictions after the game, though. So after the game, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah. Take it to the bank.
Did you win a parlay? Did you do any parlays?
For the game, I believe I said it was going to be 31-21. The Eagles were going to win, and that didn't work. I was not
The
so much.
Philadelphia sports teams are pretty good about coming in second in these big events, I've noticed.
Yeah. I think I got a new name for Philly. We're now Bubble Philly.
Bubble?
Bubble, because it blows up. You get the expectations, and then it just pops at the last minute.
We're the first best losers in 3 different sports.
That's right.
Not a lot of cities
something.
Not a lot of cities can say that.
No.
Well, we are all together here, second place and all, to talk about a category that we haven't talked about before, I think. I don't recall. Yeah.
But wait, can you hold that thought?
I can hold that thought.
Can I roll an intro?
You can roll the intro.
Mike, can I roll an intro?
Oh, we always love the intro.
Do we have an intro?
We do. And it's going to play right. Welcome to What We Watch When We Drink, a Booze Dancing Entertainment Network podcast featuring lively discussions about movies, TV shows, and anything else that we're watching while we drink our favorite boozy beverages. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Audible, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can also find us on boozedancing.com. And if you have any questions, comments, show or drink suggestions, email us at boozedancing@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. That sets the mood, right?
It sets the mood for a nice dinner at a really fancy restaurant. Well, we are talking about two topics that are kind of foreign to us. Good eating and a category of spirits that we're not familiar with. We can't even say it.
Cognac?
Cognac. Is the G silent? Is the N silent? Is the C silent? Which C? One of them is silent. Is it? We're going to talk about cognac, and we are very lucky today to have on with us Don Davies, a friend of the podcast.
Don Davis.
Is it Don Davis?
It's Don Davis. It's been confirmed.
Is it cognac or cognac?
I'm going to bring her in. Shall we bring her in?
Man, we'll bring her in. Sure.
The crazy cat lady in the Cotswolds?
Crazy cat lady in the Cotswolds.
Live from the Cotswolds.
Don Davis!
Don! So now we've got a new last name.
I'm sorry, Don Davis.
So I really love your intro. I need that in my life, and I love the fact that you ended on Disney.
We're trying to get as many big sponsors in our life that'll pay a bill or two, right? Hi, Don. Welcome back.
How are you?
We're good. The last time you were here, we talked about Seinfeld.
To be
Podcast
fair,
about nothing.
I literally was like, oh, just be on for like an hour. I think it was like 3 hours later we stopped talking.
We tend to talk a lot. Yeah. Yes. We're like, marathons of Seinfeld. Yes. Well, welcome back. We have you on for a couple of great reasons. One, you're going to teach us about the category of cognac. For one reason alone, you're a cognac professional, and you're going to be running a cognac show in London, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just one of those spirits. I think we talk a lot about spirits and this concept of terroir, which I think is absolute bull. But I do think spirits have a real sense of place. And I think cognac especially does have that sense of place because actually the product is directly coming from the area that it's grown in, your base product, and it translates and it stays its life for 99% of them in the region. So, I think it really speaks to the region it's from.
And as we talked about a bit before we came on, how there are certain categories that kind of go up and down, and whiskey's hot and rum is hot. And then there's categories that aren't so hot, but they're kind of growing out of the blue. And I think cognac is one of those, right?
And it's coming back. Cognac actually was one of the big drinks, back in the days, at the olden times. And I think everyone just kind of fell out of love with it because whiskey got kind of sexy and now rum's getting sexy. But I do think, cognac's a very beautifully accessible liquid because there's lovely fruit to it. And I think, it's just one of those ones, if you're starting your journey into aged spirits, it's a really, really good one to kind of start with.
And because this is a podcast about television watching and movie watching, we are going to pair this Cognac 101 event with you with a movie that came out late last year, The Menu, which has so many connections to this conversation. This is going to be really fun. We're going to come back to The Menu shortly and talk about the movie. But first, why don't we give some background to you? You'll give us your elevator speech about who you are, where you've been, what you're doing now, and then kind of connect to cognac.
Absolutely. So actually, The Menu was a really, really good choice because I started my career first behind the bar and then actually in Michelin star restaurants. So, I think that was for me when I was watching it, I was like, oh my God, I really recognize half these people. But yeah, that's where my love of what wine came from first, because I was a sommelier first and then I managed restaurants. And then I went to a place called Selfridges, which is a kind of high-end luxury retail store in London. And I was their wine and spirits buyer, which is where I kind of got my passion for spirits from. And then I was very, very lucky to get a job or be hired by Sakinda and Rajbir Singh, who own a company called the Whiskey Exchange, which you can sort of find us in America. We're online. But yeah, and that's where I kind of really, really started learning about spirits. And I have a huge passion for them. Still have my passion for wine. You can't take wine out of the girl. Can't take the girl out of wine either way. But yeah, I think, and both Sakinda and I have a real passion for cognac. So when I joined, actually, we were already doing a whiskey show. And the next show we decided to do was cognac show because both of us were like, no one loves it anymore. It's kind of seen a bit like sherry, like the old man's drink in the corner, or, you get those horrible big brandy balloon things. And I think it was kind of, we wanted to bring a little bit of life back into the category. So, yeah.
But that's where whiskey was too, right? In the 90s?
And Sakinda, for me, is really responsible, especially in the UK, for kind of putting whiskey on the map. I think he's been an incredibly inspiring figure, actually, in the whiskey world for anyone that knows their whiskey or has got a passion for whiskey and is a bit of a geek. Sakinda has one of the best collections of whiskey in the world. He really knows who he's talking about. So, and I think both of us in our little geekdom just were like, yeah, let's do it.
When you started at the Whiskey Exchange, obviously it's called the Whiskey Exchange. So I assume most of the SKUs there were whiskey, I assume. Were there very few cognac SKUs at the time?
I think because Sakinda had a passion, he was importing quite a few producers who are absolutely incredible from the cognac region. Like we brought in Valentin, who are one of my favorite people. He was doing Gros Préhin and some of these very small guys. And actually, one of the first trips we ever went on was to Cognac. And it was absolutely amazing. I remember we went to this old guy's house, a guy called Paul Giraud, who, I don't know, must be about 70 plus. And he was amazing. He works everything organically in the vineyards, even though he's not certified organic. He does everything himself. His family in the very beginning weren't interested in taking over from him. So we were really worried that actually the house would die and be swallowed up by a bigger house. But luckily his son's come on board now. But I remember just being in his house tasting his cognacs. And I was just like, this is one of the most exciting tastings I've ever done in my life. So I turned around and I said, can you adopt me, please? And he said, I'll marry you. And I was like, maybe not. I just think about it for a wee minute there.
So 10 years ago, versus now, are there many smaller cognac makers now? Like we see in Irish spirits, Irish whiskey, we see all these new distilleries popping up. In America, the same thing. Is that kind of what's going on in France too?
To a degree, yes. I mean, I think what you find in sort of a lot of these places, like the regions like Champagne and Cognac, actually they're very similar, which is quite interesting considering actually the heart of Cognac is called Grand and Petit Champagne. Absolutely nothing to do with the region of Champagne further north. But I think, what you find is a lot of these houses were selling to the big boys. I think there was a lot of the big producers don't have the land to distill all their own product. They're often buying distillate from growers. And so actually what you were finding is I think these guys were suddenly seeing, oh, cognac's starting to kind of climb back up, and there's more interest from outside of France, because actually France are quite a small drinker of cognac. And I think so now we're seeing these really, and I think there's a growth. I think actually, much as I hate to say it, gin is probably the reason why we see popularity of such smaller spirit producers coming through, because I actually think it kind of made people go outside the box. I think most people would recognize the brand Hennessy, but would they recognize many others? Probably not, especially in America, where it's, I think, up to 95% of cognac sales are Hennessy.
Wow.
I think it's super high. I can't remember if it's about that, but it's pretty there.
Huh.
But I think a lot of these small guys actually sort of have started to come through the woodwork, especially in the UK. I mean, we're very close, so it's great because we can kind of easily import.
What are the rules on cognac?
So yeah, cognac is what we call an Appellation Origin Controle. So in the States, you have something called a GI when it comes to wine. They have very strict rules in the same way as something like a bourbon or an American whiskey, or more bourbon, has very strict rules. So yes, it has to come from the region of cognac. Cognac is split into, I always get this wrong, 6 main regions. So the heart of cognac is called Grand Champagne and Petit Champagne. That is where you see the longer aging, more fine kind of styles of cognac. It's very chalk heavy soil, beautiful kind of very characterful styles. You have an area called Borderies, which is actually one of my favorites because it has these beautifully kind of slightly floral, a little bit deeper, richer styles of cognac. And then you have the Bon Bois, the Bon Ordinaire, and I've missed one, it'll come back to me later, the Fimbois. And, they tend to sort of do the more the mass markety styles as bigger cognacs coming out of there, but some beautiful areas within there as well, actually. So, I think the region itself gives you different styles and different characters. And then once you kind of start to make your wine, of course, it comes from grapes. Uni Blanc is the main varietal, but you can also see some other grape varietals.
What was the grape again?
Uni Blanc. Uni Blanc is also known as Trebbiano.
Oh, okay.
In cognac, you want to have something that's got quite high acid and not a lot of character.
Like me, high in acid, low in character.
Yes, so
not a poor character, just not a lot of character.
Not a poor character. I love a little Uni Blanc, and I love you. And I think what happens. So Uni Blanc's just a very easy grape variety work because you can't put any sulfur on the grapes. Because if you put sulfur to protect the grapes from oxidation, what happens is as soon as you start fermenting it and it gets into distillation, of course, every time you distill something, you're timesing any character that was there in the beginning by quite a lot. So any sulfur that goes on there actually then damages the end product. You'll get a very sulfur product.
Do they add sulfur, or is it just the sulfur coming from like the grapes?
Sulfur. So normally when you're bringing grapes in from harvest, you'll probably put a little bit of sulfur on them just to protect them.
Oh, okay.
Before you get in. But a lot of the press houses, like in Champagne, are in the region. They're very close. So you can get those grapes in, press them, get them fermenting. So essentially, you're making a wine.
That was my next question. So you basically make a wine and you run it through the still.
Yeah.
Like when you make whiskey, you make a beer and you run it through the still.
Yeah. It's the exact same principle. So the stills have to be a certain type. They have to be a Charente still, which is a pot still. They're those beautiful stills you may have seen that kind of have that little chapeau, as we call them, little hat. They're beautiful copper stills. And, they have to have direct fire or gas. Sometimes they distill on what we call the lees. So the lees is any of the dead skin cells that come from when you're producing a wine. If you filter very tightly, you won't get any of that dead yeast and sort of bits of grape skin or whatever in there. But actually, if you distill on the lees, like people like Remy Martin distill on lees, you get a much more textural, rich cognac. Someone like Hennessy distills off the lees because they want less character. No, I shouldn't say that, should I? My God, I'm being sacked already.
So who's not a future who's not a future sponsor of this podcast?
Let's call it a lighter cognac, shall we say? No.
There you go.
I mean, no. To be fair, I'm taking the piss of it. But to distill or on or off the lees, it doesn't matter. It just gives you a different style of cognac.
So one question: when they do the first distill, if they don't put it in a barrel, it's essentially an eau de vie, right?
Yeah, essentially you would just make a grape, an aged
Okay.
brandy, an eau de vie. But in cognac, so if you look at, let's go through cognac production first, and then we can talk a little bit about the comparison with Armagnac. So it goes through the distill twice. It is a single batch process, as we know all pot still distillation is. And then it has to go into barrel. It must be aged. Now, on the labels of cognac, you often see the words VS, VSOP, XO. Now, most people look at me and go, oh, what do those mean? So it's a really easy way of remembering it. VS, there's 2 letters. Minimum age, 2 years. VSOP, 4 letters. Minimum age, 4 years. XO, minimum 10 years, 1 and a no. That's the way I always describe it to people, so people remember. So 2 years minimum aging, 4 years minimum aging, and 10 years minimum aging for XO.
Is it the kind of thing also like whiskey where they're taking various barrels and the youngest one has to be that age?
Yes. So
there could be a 15-year-old, but the lowest one is a 2, so it's a 2.
Yes, 100%. Okay. And actually, a lot of the really good producers, those smaller guys, even in an XO, you're seeing 20 years plus. So actually, for me, cognac as a spirit is one of the best value spirits when you're talking about older cognacs. You do get vintage cognacs, but you don't see it very often, just purely because there's a lot of legal restrictions that go around making vintage.
No, but the vintage, is it the year that distilled?
The year is distilled and went into barrel, yes.
Okay, so I know Armagnac does a lot of that, right?
Yeah, so Hein, absolutely. I think you've got Prunier, which has some. There's a lot of Hein are really the ones with Delamant. Well, Hein is really the ones that are known for it. I think they've really kind of made their niches doing vintage. Frappin to an extent as well. They've started doing a lot more. They do multi-millésime, which is blends of different years, but certain years. So yeah, there's quite a lot of rules around cognac. It has to be bottled in cognac.
What about barrels and the kind of wood?
Has to be oak. So you couldn't. So for example, Martel does a cognac. I'm putting that in inverted commas, called Swift. So it cannot be called cognac. It has to be an eau de vie because they've aged it in ex-American barrels. So it has to be French oak or wine oak, and it can't have held anything before. So technically, you could use American oak, but you couldn't have put anything in it before that wasn't a wine.
Okay, so it has to be a first use barrel like bourbon.
Yeah.
Okay, but can they reuse a cognac barrel?
Yes. So many of those barrels you go in and they're old because actually
that's still okay. It just had to have been always cognac.
Yeah, because what you actually really want with cognac, you don't want a lot of oak because you're dealing with fruit. So you want very tight grained oak. So they often buy their oak from an area called Trancé and Limousin, which is specific forests in France that actually give you that really lovely sort of tight tannins, but keep a very structured texture to the grape or to the wine in itself or the distillate. So you want this very sort of ability to age for quite a long time, which is, definitely what you want.
So you gave us a little list of cognac choices to look for locally. I failed miserably, and unfortunately, there's no whiskey exchange around the corner, so I couldn't shop there. The boys found a couple, I believe. We can show what we bought, and maybe take us through what a tasting would be like.
Hey,
the
firewall failed again.
Someone broke in?
We have security issues with our firewall.
Do you not know who I am? I mean, we should have had bodyguards.
Secret Service took the Sunday off. I don't know why. I don't know.
We do have issues, and sometimes people get through into this podcast somehow. Is the door open? Is the wall down?
I could let him in. Could I let him in?
Let him in. Let's see who this is.
I'll let him in.
We have a special guest.
Dave!
Oh my God! It's Dave Mitten. What the heck, Dave? What? I don't get it. It's like our Bob Hope is walked in again.
The wolves took care of the bodyguards. That's how I got here.
Wait, no. He can't be Bob Hope. That's Joanne.
Yes, Joanne.
He
Joanne
released-
Bothwell, yeah.
He released the hounds.
Can you be Don
Dave-
Rickles? Can you be Don Rickles?
Give me Don Rickles. Yes.
Dave has
Okay.
promised me that next whiskey show he's bringing wolves,
Real wolves.
real wolves.
They travel well.
I'm literally like at a friend's house working on a little project, and I was just explaining I've got to step away, and I was explaining booze dancing, and I was explaining Dawn, and I said, she's the only person I know that has sent an email to the CEO of a company requesting that I show up at the whiskey exchange with live wolves.
Can you do a wolf pelt? Can you do like a wolf coat? What if you
Yeah.
like a wolf fur coat?
I've got some
What
right
do you want,
here.
a live
Look, right here.
Oh, there you go.
See, like that, something like that. Yeah.
I mean, genuinely, I think Dave and I literally spent about like 3 hours after one of the whiskey show dinners, maybe after a few drams. talking.
No.
One
So
or
funny.
two.
How does that happen? I don't believe it.
So how do you guys know each other?
Oh my God, it's been a while, huh? Like
I don't know.
10 years?
I was going to guess around the 10-year mark, probably at this point. I mean, we've got a lot of the same degenerate friends that we love hanging out with. It's kind of how we all came together, I think.
Hence this show.
I think it was at Selfridges. Was it Selfridges first? I think. I can't remember if it was Selfridges when I first started in the Whiskey Exchange, or I'd been to the Whiskey Exchange whiskey show while I was at Selfridges. It's all like
I was going to say, it's a blur. That all makes sense to me. I feel like I just turned around one day and I was like, who is this wonderful human? And it was, we hit it off right away. And I'm trying to think. I feel like I was having a conversation with Mr. Broom one day and came up, and that was kind of how we kind of made the connection, just got along right away. Just a couple of nutters.
I love Dave. I love Dave with all my heart. He's in New Zealand at the moment. So I'm meant to be going. We've just launched, tomorrow we launch a new range of whiskies called the Macbeth series, which is designed by Quentin Blake, which is amazing. And Dave was one of the people who was choosing the whiskies. And we're having a big party for it next Thursday. And I was like, I'm only going if Dave's going. And everyone's like, yeah, Dave's going. Of course Dave's going. He was part of the whiskey project. No, Dave's not going. No.
No.
So I'm going to a party that I don't want to go to without my busy mate, Dave Brum.
Well, and I was going to say, I got word just the other week, Nathan Shearer and Chris Seal, they have invited me back over this May. So I'll be in your neck of the woods for an entire week with that crew. So excited for that. I don't know what I'm doing yet. That's up to them. But I will be back over before the fall.
Drinking,
Nice.
maybe
Yeah.
drinking.
Probably trying to spread a little. I know today is all about cognac, but I'll probably be trying to spread a little Canadian whiskey love throughout the UK as they normally have me doing.
We love that stuff. We love it. Honestly, Lot 40 is one of my favorite whiskeys. I love it. It's just such great value.
By the way, Dave, the Gooderham and Worts and the Lot 40, we've been spreading the word. It's getting a lot of love.
Good. Has there been nobody's tried to from our little podcast? Nobody's protested and saying take it down.
No.
protest.
No.
What did you do on your podcast? Do I need to be more outrageous?
We just talked Canadian whiskey and John Candy and trains, planes, and automobiles. Pretty tame.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It was good fun.
So, Dave, do you
Nice.
have a love or any stories about cognac?
My generation, and when we were learning to make cocktails in the late 90s and early 2000s, cognac was certainly a thing because we were learning about vieux carrés and sidecars and how to work with a lot of the classics. I'm seeing a lot of different brands of cognac really start to take focus on the cocktail world like they never have before. From Hennessy to Martell, you name it, like they're really, really focusing on the cocktail crowd.
I think they've woken up again, I think those Prohibition era drinks are starting to come back big style.
Yeah.
And, cognac featured very heavily in sort of that kind of era and the era after. But, and I think it is really interesting. We always have a cocktail show, actually, and we have an amazing guy, a couple of guys from the cognac region, from Jarnac, called Bar Lucio. And honestly, I spend most of my day at that bar.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you think of it too, like part of when we teach in our Canadian history class, like the way North American whiskey made its way over to the UK was like during the Napoleonic Wars, where there was a shortage on brandy and cognacs, and then even in the cocktail world, Canadian whiskey and American rye got a shot at things because there was a shortage on cognac as well, which was in a lot of the originals. Like a Sazerac was originally made with a cognac, not an American rye, as I'm sure you all know. But yeah, so it's like, you know, I'm seeing it. I mean, at Tales of the Cocktail last July, there are a lot of cognac activations, more than I'd seen before.
You know, if you think about it, it's a small region. Like it's not a big region. You have and just to have that somewhere from such a specific area to actually produce something that's so worldwide. You know, I think it's a lot of credit to it. You know, whiskey, make it anywhere for God's sakes.
Mike, you heard that, right? Make it anywhere. Just saying, put that shed to use.
Is it cognac made in other parts of the world?
I think it's called brandy.
Yeah, it has to be called brandy. So, you know, I think what is really, really good and powerful about what the French appellation system does is it protects the names of what they're doing. So champagne, for example, cognac, armagnac, even if you use the word Gnac and, you know, imply it's a drink that's a French drink. You know, if you look at champagne, they took Chanel to court because they wanted to name a perfume champagne. So, you know, I think it really, really, they're very, very good at protecting the name and the appellation, which I think is a fantastic thing.
So, Mike, you can forget that trademark on Bourbagnac.
When we went to the bottle shop, we were looking for little minis to see if they had any variety of anything, and the woman behind the counter said, "All the Gnacs are right here. That's all. the Gnacs are here. They're all
Armagnac, cognac."
Because they had them all in one spot. All the Gnacs. I'm like, okay, they're Gnacs.
Armagnac, some of the best value with cognac, probably better value than cognac for old spirits.
Yeah.
You can still get affordable 1940s, 1930s Armagnac. I shouldn't tell anyone that because I don't want anyone to buy it, so I can buy it.
Hey, should we pour something? We've been talking for half an hour and we haven't drank anything. I'm getting really thirsty.
I've been drinking the whole time. I'm sorry. Was I supposed to have waited?
In addition to a gambling problem, you got a drinking problem, but that's okay. We like that.
Actually, while we're talking about drinking, can we talk about the appropriate glass to drink a cognac in?
Only if I have the right one.
On that note, gang, I'm not here to hijack. I just wanted to see all your beautiful faces and say hi to
Oh,
Dawn.
Dave, I love you.
Thanks,
Love
Dave.
you all. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for making time.
All right, Dave.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming in.
Love you.
Anytime.
You too.
Always welcome, Dave.
Well, that was special. Dave Mitten from Corby and Hiram Walker coming in to say hello to his old friend, Don. That was fun, huh?
So this podcast should be who we love when we drink.
See, I love it.
So, Don, you're going to say there's appropriate glassware.
So, I mean, for those of you who follow my Instagram occasionally, I slag off the coupe, which is a very inappropriate vessel to drink champagne from. And I am quite similar with the brandy balloon. I'm not a massive fan of the brandy balloon because essentially what you're encouraging people to do is put their hand on the glass, which warms the liquid, which then just gives you alcohol, not fruit flavors. So, you know, I think you guys, I think it was Mike with a classic Glencairn, and yeah, you know, those are perfect because you get enough air in to release the phenols, and you guys all pass. Well done.
Oh, thank
I was
goodness.
stressing.
I was so
I was
worried.
stressing.
I was freaking out there.
I thought she was going to say right out of the bottle. I was really afraid. I thought she was going to say just right out of the bottle.
With or without the paper bag.
Well, if you're in the club, you kind of see.
Yeah, exactly. It comes in glass. Exactly.
So, what are you guys drinking?
I don't know. So I'm going to skip the Hennessy
Don't know.
because I'm not sure which way to go. Should we do the Hein first, Mike?
Ask Dawn. We got Hein and we have.
I have the Hein and the Jean-Luc Pasquet.
So
4.
you've got 4, and it's the rare on Hein, isn't it? The rare.
Yeah, the rare. Yeah.
I would start with Pasquet actually, because Pasquet for me, they're the most wonderful people. They're a young couple, actually been in the family for a few more generations, but they recently, Jean-Luc and Amy just took over the estate properly from the parents. Actually, Amy's American.
Oh, I was going to say that's not a very French name.
No,
Emmy?
Emmy.
That's what I was going to say. Isn't that Emmy?
Emmy. So she grew up on the East Coast, I think it was, if I remember rightly.
Okay.
And they moved over there, have a young family. And actually, his father started like working organically in the vineyards, and I do believe that organics does give better grapes. I really feel that their liquid has this lovely fruit character. It's a really pretty floral cognac. I believe the four is Grand Champagne or Petit Champagne. I can't remember off the top of my head.
When we went to the bottle shop, they had a 4, a 7, and a 10.
And a 10.
So I'm going to guess that they're bottling for us because we're not smart enough to figure out what VSOP and VS and XO are. So you need to put 4, 7, and 10 on the bottles because we're just not going to get it.
You can't do the math.
I think what's very clever about cognac today, I think cognac producers were always sort of very staid. They were looking at sort of the past and really holding on to, I mean, they're all still holding on to tradition, but I think the younger generations coming through are trying to make it more approachable to a younger market and a market that maybe doesn't understand VS, VSOP, XO. You know, actually, I think we see XO more readily. You know, some rums you see XO and stuff. Not that it means anything when you see it on a rum bottle 90% of the time. But you know, I think that younger generation coming through is really starting to kind of modernize labels, talk about cognac in a much more upfront way. You know, you look at that cognac, it's just so drinkable. You put that 4-year-old in a highball, ice, and either soda or tonic, even maybe ginger ale if you wanted in summertime.
I couldn't get to the whiskey exchange, so I went to.
Well, neither could I. We went to Total Wine.
I went to a place that started with a K and ends with an L, and I picked up this. I don't know.
I was like, Kmart? They do booze now?
Kmart. Do we know what Pierre Ferrand is?
Pierre Ferrand is actually Alexandre, who produces plantation rum. It's his tasting cognac.
Oh,
and
okay.
It started off, the whole thing started off when he bought the cognac house from Madame Ferrand. And it was an old family owned house. He's taken it on, and now kind of, again, he's one of the kind of, called him a maverick in cognac. He's playing around with different barrels. So he's been doing port aged Davies. He's been doing Sauterne aged. He's been playing around with whiskey cask. Okay, you can't call it cognac then, but you know, he's trying to change the language of cognac from a perspective of bartenders. Bartenders use Ferrand quite a lot. That one will be from Premier Cru Vineyards, mainly in Bon Appetit.
This is really good.
It's super good.
It's really, really nice. It's really nice.
I thought it tasted like a little grainy, which is odd because there's no grain in it. It tastes a little grainy, but it's such a sipper, and it's only 40%. And I say only 40% because I have problems, but it's only 40%. But it still has like the mouthfeel. It's like that velvety. It's just really good.
Don't say mouthfeel. Don't say mouthfeel.
It's really good mouthfeel.
Don't say mouthfeel.
What's wrong with mouthfeel? Is that like moist? I don't like the word moist.
It's in the movie.
It's in the movie, the menu.
Oh,
Don't
yeah,
say mouthfeel.
mouthfeel.
Don't say mouthfeel. Mouthfeel. Don't say mouthfeel.
We watched it at 7:30 this morning.
But it's, you know, my older brother, this is his only thing. He'll drink cognac whenever we go out. Just gets cognac. That's it. And
good man.
When he gets it, he unfortunately buys the American stuff. So it's going to be Courvoisier or it's going to be Hennessy or something else. Because most of the bars, that's all they have. As you said, it's 95% of probably whatever comes over here. But I never was really one to drink it because I'm like, he's kind of an imbecile. I don't really know. I'm going to drink something else. But now I'm like, well, I might have to admit he knows something. I don't know. This is horrible.
I mean, that's it. You know, you won't find that many cognacs that are going above 40, 41. Actually, Sakin and I have a theory that actually if they push the ABV up a little bit up to, say, 46, you probably get a lot more whiskey drinkers drinking.
Why do they stay at 40? Is it just to stretch the barrels?
Balanced. They feel that that's the balance that they like. And actually, the one thing they do in cognac, which I think could be employed by a lot more, when they're diluting. So, it comes out of barrel, it's cask strength as per normal, and they have to dilute it back down. But what they do is they actually dilute back down very, very slowly. Some of them actually, at Ferrand, they age some of their water in the cognac barrels and take it slowly down with this water. So they're very, very gradual, because if you put water into whatever grape brandy you're doing, it tends to shock the brandy quite a lot. So it's quite interesting, actually. And I think it just makes this very, very harmonious drink.
Are there any tricks to tasting cognac? Like we
approach it in the same way as
slowly.
The one thing I would say is don't add water. You don't really need to because it's 40%. And look, if you feel the alcohol is high, of course, put a couple of drops in to just...
Dawn, we have problems.
That's the one thing that I didn't get from either of the bottles that we had is that you don't get the vapor. Like, it doesn't really smell like it. Obviously, it is alcohol, but it doesn't really smell like it's alcohol. Where even some 40% whiskeys, you'll still get a little burn. There'll be a little bit of finish. There'll be something in there letting you know that it's
always better.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's made from a grape, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Just and nice. It's bad wine. Like, I could start slagging off some really bad wines here, but I'm going to be good. I'm going to be good. I love it. Mike just always...
I'm like 3 times now. I was like Danny Thomas spit taking with you. Saying things. Wait if I take a sip.
This is what we love about you, because you could probably sit there and you'll insult somebody for 15 minutes with a smile on your face. They'll walk away like, "Oh, she's so lovely." Hold on a second. What just happened?
She's a pro.
Wait a minute.
Wait a second. Hold on. No, that's not nice.
This was very reasonable. This was $45, I think.
Yeah, this was like $55, I think. And yours was a little more, Mike?
They had 2 bottles of the Hein. The one was 45 or something, and this was 70 or 72, whatever, for the rare and
older one.
Yeah.
And well, it's not so much that I know what I'm buying, but isn't it pretty? Look at the pretty bottle. It's so pretty. And the topper has the little deer.
Everyone loves a stag.
Sorry, I'm just a sucker for the packaging. It's just
love the bright and shiny,
and it came in a box.
Oh,
it came in a box. Can I get a box?
So, I mean, there's just so much to it.
Look, everyone got a box.
I get a box, and you get a box, and you get a box.
My one neighbor told me that if they actually wrote the word deer piss on a bottle but put it on a really pretty bottle, I would buy it because
you probably would.
I really would buy the bottle.
What was that beer that Brewdog did? The one that was in like the squirrel bottle? It had like the squirrel carcass or whatever it was. You would buy that, wouldn't you?
I would buy it. It's just
why not? Sure, why not?
Sure, I love it. It's just Hein's one of the old families. So what's quite interesting in the region, that area was populated a lot by, and you can see it in Bordeaux as well, the Dutch, the Irish, and the English. They were a lot of the families that some of these houses came.
I was going to say, is it like Kieran Hines? I mean, are they related? I mean, it doesn't sound very French.
Yeah.
It's an Irish family, 100%. Like the Hine family, they've been there for years. They're a very, very, I'd say, traditional house. If you could ever go there in a little village, an area, a village called Gnac. And it's a fantastic area. And you go to the Hein cellars and you can go in, and Hein actually buy their distillate in, and then age it further. They have a couple of growers that they work with very, very closely. They do have their own vineyards, their own land, but yeah, they buy a lot as well. And it's such a beautiful house to visit. So Cognac is a very beautiful region. It's definitely worth it. Great food. Oh.
This is really delicious. I really like this.
The Hein bottle just says that it's rare.
So rare is their VSOP level, but it is
that's like a 4-year.
So you're looking at probably minimum 7+, and then up.
Because when you look at the color of the Hein versus the Pesquet, and I'm not probably saying any of these correctly, it's so much darker, and I attribute that to the time in the barrel, but I don't necessarily know if that's the case. Maybe it's just a different grape that it puts out a little bit different color.
You will get, like in rum and like in whiskey, you will get color caramel adding. So Pesquet doesn't use anything.
This is the Pesquet, and then this is the Hein, and it's a
wow.
decidedly different color.
Substantially darker.
And I wasn't really sure if it's just time or, like you said, if they caramel color or do something else.
They will use probably a little bit of color caramel, but Hein does age for a long time. The average age is much, much higher than. It'll probably be more likely a little bit of younger cognac, but the majority at XO plus level.
Because what Aaron has is fairly dark too, as well.
Yeah, very, very much.
You said that's like probably a 4-year, right?
Yeah, about 4 to 7 is my feeling on Ombre. I can't quite remember on him. There's a lot of laws, but actually, there are people that are doing, the odd dodgy thing over in Cognac to get
Yeah,
that
that never
color.
happens here.
Inconceivable.
The Hein is definitely a little thicker, and it has a little bit more, like a lot more sweetness to it.
I think it's really the mouthfeel. It's the mouthfeel.
What did I say, Mike, last night? This will go great with like a nice pear tart.
Mm-hmm.
Like a nice like creme anglaise underneath.
Yep.
A little tart tatin.
Yeah, exactly. See?
That
That would be very nice. A little cinnamon on top.
On that food talk,
how's that for a segue?
That was a very good segue. Yes, we are also gathered here to talk about a movie, The Menu, and it came out last year, and it has so many interesting connections to our little world of spirits and things. It's a comedy horror film. I guess that's what I've seen how it's described. Was that kind of fair? I think I laughed a lot. I'm not sure I was ever scared, but I laughed a lot.
Scared, maybe occasionally grossed out.
Maybe grossed out. Yep. Directed by Mark Malad, who is kind of a pretty big name guy here in the States. He's Succession, Shameless, Game of Thrones, Entourage. He's got a background in some big name stuff on TV.
Lots of TV stuff. Right. And you have a plot somewhere there, don't you? That you could not a lot. Very short.
A really
very
simple one. That's
summary.
right. Give that. That's a good one.
Yes. A plot summary, thanks to the fine folks at Fox Searchlight website. A couple, Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicholas Hoult, travels to a coastal island to eat at an exclusive restaurant where the chef, played by Ralph Fiennes, has prepared a lavish menu with some shocking surprises. How's that for understated?
That seriously understates.
It is Rafe, right? He does go by Rafe. It's not Ralph.
It's Rafe.
Another cognac thing.
I served him.
What?
Did you?
In a restaurant. Yeah, I served him in the Lepre. I loved him. He was fabulous. He was so polite, and he was such a genuinely nice guy. I had like a 20-minute conversation with him. Wow. He was with his agent.
So he's not like Voldemort at all then? He's not like...
No, he's lovely and very good looking. I mean, this was a few years back, but very good looking.
More English patient than Harry Potter. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, before the burns or after the burns?
Good question.
Before.
So this is a that plot description there is pretty minimal. It's a little more complicated than that. Anyone can just jump in here and kind of throw out what the more to the plot that there is, but it's a intensely crazy meal that goes and planned and goes awry, maybe for the viewer more than and for the customers. And I think this movie is really great for our times because of what it talks about in terms of the foodie culture and social media and the skewering of food documentaries and all of those things. And I don't know if that was the intent, but it really is kind of perfect for the time we are in this world of excess. Maybe.
No, I think it's the instant gratification kind of aspect of it.
There was a little blurb on IMDb. It was the trivia, and I thought this was kind of interesting. Going back to that, it says the 7 deadly sins are covered by the 6 tables plus staff. Greed is Soren, Dave, and Bryce, who embezzled. Gluttony is Tyler, who's willing to die for food. Lust is Richard, who cheated on his wife. Envy is George, who's a washed-up name-dropping actor. Pride is Lillian and Ted, who believe the dinner is just for them. Sloth is Julian's mother, who did nothing to stop her husband's abuse. And Wrath is Julian and the other chefs who murder everyone.
That's actually really good.
I know. I was like, that's pretty cool, right?
I hope everyone's watched this because you've just given absolutely everything.
Whatever. That's okay.
Right. You know, I hear the Eagles lost Super Bowl too.
Well, how's this, Dawn? You can give us extensive tasting notes on any of these cognacs. Will that really change the drinking experience? No. You still have to experience it.
No, you know what I think? And I always think when I'm because I grew up in restaurants. Restaurants was where I started my life. And I remember it was the early days of blogging when I started you always had the food critics. We have the Fay Master, the Giles Corrin of this world, and there were some that were like real asses. And they were exactly like, the one couple. And you just sat there and everything came out of her mouth. I was like, I've heard this. And that was the really frightening thing about this movie. That with those customers, I had heard pretty much everything. Like I was working at Zuma, so we were taking care of a lot of superstars. I was working at the Ledbury. We were taking care of a lot of like top end customers, a lot of people that are cheating on their wives, kind of thing. And they came in with a secretary during the week and wives on the weekend. You have to be like,
a business lunch.
How long? We haven't seen you for such a long time.
Since Tuesday.
And this is why I picked the movie, not because I think it's a great movie, but I thought it would make some interesting conversation.
It definitely, and like for me, it was the time. I remember when we used to have people come in. They used to bring in their cameras, and then they used to start taking the pictures. And I'd be like, "Your food's going to be cold. How can you enjoy something?"
Yeah.
Like, I'm the worst Instagrammer in the world because I get so excited by the food. I take a really blurry shot of it because I feel like it's for the gram, and then I'm like, "Oh my god, this is so exciting!" And I think I've even met that chef. Like I've worked with some wonderful chefs, like incredible chefs. Brett Graham at the Ledbury. I worked for Gordon, and I actually love Gordon. Not many do. No, Gordon, if you're watching, I love you.
The hand clapping was unsettling when he would just slap his hands together and bring
that was
everything,
the whole point, right?
Bring everything to a close, like the drill sergeant coming in and putting it together. Where you're like, ooh, jeez.
You go to some of these top places, like where these, especially now these open kitchens all the rage. And I'm now going to slag off a restaurant because I went to a restaurant the other day called Amethyst in London. No one go there, please, because it was the worst experience. And the staff were wonderful. I can time this perfectly for you. That's it.
Every single time.
Boom.
When I say I'm about to slag someone off, maybe just don't drink.
But anyway, maybe put my glass down.
But this chef was such an arrogant, and if I was going to swear, I'd use a very short, intense word here.
Prick?
Would have been a bit stronger, but yeah.
Wanker?
Let's start with a C.
Yes,
Wanker?
it did.
Oh, it's a C. Nice.
Chef? Was it chef? It was chef.
Was it chef? Was it chef?
It was chef ends with a T. That's the question.
Where's Ricky Gervais when you need him?
But he literally, I'm appreciative of my food. I know what it takes to be in those kitchens and work the hours that these guys do. And, the front of house was lovely. I can't slag the front of house off. They were fabulous. But this guy, because I'd said in the beginning, when I booked the table, this was the fun bit of this. I booked the table and I was with a friend of mine, a guy called Craig Harper, who's one of the most wonderful humans in the world. And both of us are quite loud and very overexcited when we're in each other's company. We're like little puppy dogs. And especially around food and good wine. So I said, you know what, we don't. They were like, well, you can sit on the chef's table, but it'll cost you an extra like £30. I was like, no, it's fine. We're happy to sit downstairs. So when they called me to reconfirm the booking, they asked the same thing. And I was like, no. It's like, they asked me like 10 times. At this point, I'm like really now pissed off because I don't want to sit on the chef's table. I don't want to pay an extra £30. I worked in kitchens. I don't need to see the chef. I already know what they're like. I've done that. It's dead to me. Anyway, so we walk in and we're pretty much the only ones there. And she's like, takes us downstairs. And I was like, look, I don't want you guys running up and downstairs. Fine, we'll sit at the chef's table. And he obviously knew I'd rejected sitting there. So he literally gave me like I thought he was going to come after me with the knife. At one point, my friend Craig had to stop me from going over and punching him.
Oh my God.
By the way, that's not very English.
I'm the customer.
Or Canadian.
That's more hooligan.
I'm not that English.
No, that's Liverpool, not Cotswold.
Yeah, really.
But genuinely, like there are these chefs out there that believe that they're the gods, and I've worked with some of them. Many of my friends have worked with some of them. So actually, that hand clapping, that was like an everyday occurrence in a Michelin-star kitchen.
I'd like to think this is generational or cyclical, and that we are at the post-annoying chef part of our timeline, but we're probably not. But I'd like to
No.
think at some point we're going to get past this. I mean, some places are closing. The restaurant world is a different world than it
Yes.
was 3 years ago. Now it's about being able to keep people employed and keep your business open, and hopefully not so. The arrogance is kind of hopefully going away. I hope.
Do you know what? I'd love to say it was, but I think, to have that confidence, it's confidence, but it's lacking of confidence. They need that accolade.
Yeah.
It's like anything,
Yeah.
when you're cooking to that level, and having worked with some of the top chefs in the world, and still knowing a lot of, some incredible chefs, and having eaten in places across the globe where they are doing that really top level food. I think there is definitely better treatment in the kitchens. I was working in kitchens where people were being slammed against walls, and it was violent in those days. Even when I was front of house, my partner is a very, very, very talented pastry chef, and he definitely there were brawls in the kitchen and stuff like that. And that's changed. That's definitely changed, because you just can't treat people like that anymore. I said to our head of HR the other day, who I thought almost had a heart attack when I said it, I was like, gone are the good days when you could just sack someone.
Yeah, those days are over.
But
See, and I wasn't drinking then. I've learned my lesson.
Have you seen The Bear? Have you heard of The
Oh,
Bear?
I was going to mention that.
No.
So
Can I go watch that tomorrow morning?
Well,
sure.
So it's a short series on Hulu. I think there's 8 episodes, Ange. And
it's like 8.
It's about a small restaurant, tiny, like a counter restaurant in Chicago.
It's a beef sandwich shop in Chicago.
It's a sandwich shop where a former Michelin star restaurant chef has come back to that was his family's sandwich shop. He's come back from New York to run this place, and he came from a big brigade restaurant, and he's come back to run this restaurant because his brother had passed away who ran it, and now he's got to take it over. And it's a sandwich shop, and he takes it over and brings that attitude from that 5-star quality restaurant to this little working class neighborhood sandwich place. It is intense. It's all the things we see kind of in the menu, but in a very small space. It's filmed amazingly, and it's only 8? I think it's 8 episodes. There's a half hour.
It goes really fast. It's
won,
really good.
It's won really a lot of this past year, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
And I think you'd enjoy having been in that world before.
If you think about it, it's hot. You're under a hell of a lot of pressure. You don't eat properly. You don't drink properly when it comes to water. You're sleeping very little. Like, you're putting your body through some absolutely insane conditions. I always say, once you've worked restaurants, whether you're front of house or back of house, you can do any job in the world, because you really have to have so much pressure with so much sleep deprivation and no food. I was like size 0 when I was in the restaurant.
I think everyone should work in food service at some point, whether it's a McDonald's or a 5-star restaurant.
I'm just where service goes to die, so it doesn't really matter.
Our chef in this movie, Julian, you can see he's a product of a poor childhood, of course, product of his environment, and then through a number of years of becoming this horrible person, right, in his professional world, and coming to this ultimate conclusion here in the movie. It has to take a toll on you, working in that condition for so long, and wanting to be that celebrity chef, and wanting to be bigger than life, and wanting to create something that's never been created before. It has to take its toll.
I'm very much afraid that somewhere in Dawn's house is the picture of her smiling as Employee of the Month, and then the pictures get progressively worse. And then at some point, we're going to read something about what happens to Dawn at a whiskey show.
I was a restaurant manager, which is slightly terrifying, but I was also head girl of my school. So,
I'm just afraid that it's going to be, some series of photos where we see how it's taken a toll on Dawn over the years.
But do you know what? But it does. It gives you a very, I have been known to lose my temper occasionally, I'm not going to lie to you. Again, HR loves me. Only with people that are idiots, to be fair. I love my staff. But I think, you do. I think what was very clever about that movie is it really it was sort of taking the mickey out of this kind of hyper culture we've created around food. You know, food is food. There was a brilliant Giles Corn, who's a well-known critic in the UK. Like in a newspaper article today, he was making a critique of a restaurant that's just not long open in the UK, and he said, "I didn't know my mother could make lemon meringue pie without a like blah 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 oven and rose petal chippings or something like." And I thought, actually, that's so correct. Like I think actually you're starting to see it now. We've very much moved away from that very high end food culture. I think you see less of those very frou-frou restaurants. Those tasting menus are kind of going a little bit more. But actually this idea of the celebrity is not going away anywhere soon. We see it in everything. And I think with all of that focus, you've lost, and that's what it was very, very good, the passion behind why people cook. And at the end, where she escapes because she asks him to go back to doing what he loved, which was cooking, simple, and that's why he let her out. I just felt that that's where we are today as a society. I thought that was very clever how they kind of wove that together. There was some really random bits.
I listened to Dave Chang's podcast a lot, and he had a book came out last year with a food writer from the New York Times, and they both come from ethnic backgrounds, of course, and she's Indian, he's Chinese, and they wrote a book about cooking like your parents cooked, where there were no recipes, and it was about cooking and using all the food that you bought. It's about making a stew that's going to last all week, and you're using all of the food. You're making a broth that you can use 14 different ways for the next week and a half.
And I do wonder if we'll turn back to that.
I think we are going back to that.
With food costs going up and everything,
right?
You can't throw away stuff. We're also a very sort of throwaway society. I think that's also kind of quite kind of poignant about that movie, that things just it was all just throw away. And I always go back to Anthony Bourdain, and I think he was. And I'm presuming you guys have watched the Anthony Bourdain on Netflix.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I actually genuinely can't watch it because I know I'll cry for about 3 hours. So I have to prepare myself mentally because he was incredible. And I've read all the books from him and things. For me, that was a cook. He was a cook. Sure. He wasn't a chef. Are we going to go back to that purely because of necessity, actually?
I'd also say it wasn't just a cook. He was an eater. A lot of chefs are like, I don't eat any of that. I make that for other people. Like, well, how do you know what it's supposed to taste like? I don't care. I would never eat that. Where Anthony Bourdain would be like, the street meats. He did shows where he would just walk up to carts and get whatever weird stuff they were grilling on the side of the road. That's the kind of food you want. I want food I want to eat. I don't want food that's pretty,
Yeah. I think, that's what's going to be quite interesting, I think, over the next couple of years. And I do hope we go back to that. I mean, I love cooking. I cook all the time. I'm a cook that doesn't need a recipe necessarily. I'll just look at what I've got in the fridge and be like, okay, I've got no food. I've got to make something. I've got some beans. I've got some tomatoes. I've got, bam, that's thing. And I don't know how you guys feel, because I know when I lived in America, the culture of eating out was just so easy because it was so cheap. But I feel that's changing now in the States.
I find that it's gotten expensive, and I don't mind paying when it's good, but I don't think the quality's there. Yeah. But I think a lot of it. I was talking to a friend of mine last night. A lot of it's staffing issues. They just don't have the people.
And food costs are high. You're going to pay double what you paid 10 years ago for a family of 4. It's difficult to go out and have a cheap dinner, and it's probably true of the cocktail side, the spirit side too. It's a different world than it used to be.
And I think over COVID, you had to learn how to cook or to do certain things, like make a cocktail, because you couldn't go out and have a cocktail. I mean, I had Mitch, so I was like, Mitch in the office making a cocktail.
We all should have a Mitch.
We all should have a Mitch.
And I think, but by us especially, the good restaurants are either Italian restaurants or there's some kind of pub. So you've kind of set your sights to be like, all right, well, there really aren't really great high-end anythings around because most of them have closed.
Or if you go to Philadelphia and you want to go somewhere for a nice little posh dinner, you got to wait a month. because the whole reservation thing, it's just gotten ridiculous.
But part of that's also staffing, where I
Right,
think a lot of them are
right.
like, well, we don't fill every table because we don't have people.
And actually, people still want to eat great food. I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
I think that's what I love. That since I've been in restaurants, and I've been in restaurants or in the industry for over 20 years.
What's I've always found a bit disturbing is the Disneyfication maybe of building a restaurant in some bizarre theme,
Yeah.
and that which you
Yeah.
see here in the movie,
Yeah.
and where we have one here in Los Angeles that's fairly famous, that's got its own issues, where you're going into the restaurant and you have to take your shoes off and there's no lights on, and you're just sensing smells, and it goes beyond the five senses, or tries to.
Am I allowed to say wank? Or are you going to beat me up?
No, you could say it. Say it.
Wank. That type of restaurant has become, a little passe.
I think so.
I think.
I hope so.
I think people
ways.
want real to a degree.
Yeah.
I think there's so much fake
Yeah.
out there. Like you look on Instagram, you have a filter, you have this. I think people are getting a little tired of that. I think people want real reality. I'm hoping people want reality a lot more. And but then, I remember going to the great restaurants like the French Laundry, Thomas Keller. Oh my God, I literally wet my pants when we went there. It was the most excited I've ever been in my entire life. I literally told my boyfriend I was going to leave him at the airport because he wasn't going to get in the country, and because basically he'd forgotten to have some passport updaters. I don't know. And I was like, "You're staying here. I don't care. I'm going to French Laundry." Sayonara. French Laundry is more important. I was the dude in the movie that was like, I will die for.
All right, there, Tyler.
But
so you brought an escort to the meal, and then they executed people.
I ended up drinking some of the best wine I've ever had in my life because the dude across the table, because I booked with there's a very famous winemaker called Warren Winiarski. And I never do this. I never call a friend for anything. I always try and do it myself. But I'd literally phoned the French Laundry 999 times to try and book. Because with the French Laundry, you had to phone on the day you wanted the booking. And just phone and phone. I couldn't get through. And Warren was in town in the UK. And I said to Warren, can you get me in? And he got me in. So they knew that I was in the wine industry. And it was very sweet. We were talking to the server and talking to Thomas a bit. And a guy across on another table, I could see he was having some incredible wines. And he was like, send that table over some of these wines. They're going to appreciate it. I literally was drinking a Chem. I was drinking Cortons. I was drinking Petrus 1962. It was a very, very good day.
Oh my God.
By the way, I don't know what any of that means, but based upon your face, I'm going to say it was a good day.
Okay, let's put it in the same category as 1960s Bamor. Like we're in 1960s Bamor, Springbank, Old Springbank, Longmorn territory.
Oh, I haven't had those either. Sure, thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Now, how do you feel there? How do you feel there, Angelo? You mention this stuff all the time about food you don't have, and this is the way I feel.
Yeah, but
hold
on.
And sad.
But if with a little ingenuity, I can get the food or I can make the food. I can't get a 1960s Bowmore without mortgaging my house.
That's right.
Just saying.
I've got a Sekinda Singh in my life, so I get to drink great.
How do we get a Sekinda Singh in our life? We have 1 degree of separation. The Sekinda Singh.
Move to the Cotswolds. Apparently, there's room for let. We can go.
See?
We can go.
See, we're
to the Davis house. We can go room for let.
I have a question for you. Who was your favorite character in this movie?
That's tough, actually.
They were all pretty despicable, right?
They were all despicable, but there was
Actually, go ahead. No, you first.
No, I don't know. I'm going to think about it.
I really liked the maitre d'. She was fantastic.
She was a bitch, but in a good way.
She was great.
Elsa? Yeah.
We gel.
She's the maitre d' we all wanted to be.
Yeah.
Why?
Because you could be rude to customers. She was God. She was actually, I think she was almost like the god figure. I think he wasn't. She was more powerful until she died.
And what did she say to the one character? Like, you won't get what you desire, but you'll get what you deserve, or something like that.
There
You're
you go. Yeah. No, you will eat less than you desire and more than you deserve.
I've actually had that person many times tell me that.
Everyone in that movie was, yes, a hyper-extended version of the reality, but I recognized absolutely every character, which is why it makes it kind of, I don't know.
And I think the Anna, maybe Anya Joy Taylor, is that her name?
Yeah.
It's Anya Taylor-Joy.
Anya Taylor-Joy. She's everybody. She's everybody else. She's the rest. She's the 99.99% of the population. That's all of us, right? Or not?
Yeah.
Most of us. And
another interesting fact. Another
Yes.
interesting tidbit. I'm going through
Fact
the
point.
rundown here. So it says in the beginning of the film, the customers are led to the restaurant by Elsa and a few goats. A Judas goat is a goat used to keep cattle and other livestock calm while being led onto trucks and into slaughterhouses. This is a hint that the diners are cattle being led to the slaughter. Or should we call it an abattoir? I love that word. I love the abattoir. That's just great.
there is so much of that, I think, going on in this movie that it leads you, like the seven deadly sins. There's more going on here than just a skewering of foodie culture.
I think you have to watch it quite a few times to get everything. I feel
Yeah.
it's like one
Sure.
of those movies.
I said that earlier too. Yeah, I agree.
I'll go back and watch it just for the goats. I'm pretty sure there's something around the cheeseburger as well. There's got to be something, like that was a double stacked cheeseburger. What was that about?
We know what it's about? Deliciousness. That's what it's about.
No, you said it.
And I think the tortillas. You need to see the tortillas to see what he printed out on each person's tortillas. They delved into some of the characters, but not all the characters for what was on the tortillas.
It was very, very clever. We've all seen those wanker bankers in the
absolutely.
The restaurant.
What do we call them, Mike? Finance bros? Is that what it was?
Finance bros.
Yeah,
Finance bros.
Well, and that's a whole other part of the restaurant industry where these Michelin star restaurants are not just like some guy who has a great idea and him and his wife are going to set up a little restaurant and I'm going to make blah blah blah. No, you got to go to like some high finance guys to get this thing built. And if it's not, covering its nut every month, this thing is got to, they're going to sell the debt to some big corporation and it's going to move along and before you know it's going to be closed down.
There's very few restaurants that really stand the test of time.
Of course. They all close in 3 years, right? Ultimately.
Well, 3 years is your break even. So most restaurants, it takes 3 years to break even.
Yeah.
And, and actually you have to give anyone that's got the courage to set up a restaurant or a bar even.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of dedication, passion, and hard work. And I think,
and money.
I think because what he says in the movie Chef was that he was like, it was made clear kind of towards the end that when he sold his soul. At some point, yes, these restaurants then corporate owned to the point of you lose what made you really special in the beginning. As soon as you get a corporate involved, of course, things change.
Then you're responsible to shareholders and investors and,
Unlike this podcast, which is openly seeking anyone who would like to be a future sponsor of What We Watch When We Drink.
Our business model is much, much different.
Just out of interest, I'm presuming Filey Bay is a sponsor.
That was just a pretty picture. The sponsors are the three people you see here.
You know what the sponsors are? Whatever's left in my wallet at the end of the week. That's the sponsor. That pays for my StreamYard subscription.
I watch a lot of food documentary shows. And the way this was presented, almost like a documentary in when they brought each step in the meal. Course in the meal, thank you. And how the music, the graphics, even Tyler's bullshit. It said Tyler's bullshit, right? I love that because it all those documentaries are made with a sense of uppityness that we are better than you and this restaurant is better than anything you can ever do in your lifetime. This totally takes that down a few notches. I loved that.
I have to say there are some good ones on Netflix, and there's one that they did. They were showing a lot of the Asian. It was like food in Asia or something. I never remember the titles of anything, and it was actually quite beautiful because it was talking about some of these people that have kind of got Michelin stars or become stars from just street food cooking. And there's this one old lady in one of them who's just like making dumplings, I think it is. She's just like, get out of my kitchen. I just want to cook. I love this. She's like just putting her hand in hot oil. She's like, asbestos. When chef was like asbestos
on
hand,
the fire. Yeah.
we've all done that. We've all done that. My partner can literally pick up the hottest plate in the planet and just, he has no, I'm pretty sure he has zero fingerprints.
Here's another random factoid. Here's an interesting one. I don't know if you read it at all or not, but it wasn't on the sheet. A newspaper article in the chef's room shows that he once worked at a restaurant called Tantalus. Tantalus is the name of a character in a Greek myth. He invited the gods to his home for dinner, but tricked them into eating a stew made from the meat of his own son, whom he had murdered and dismembered in order to test their omniscience. When the gods realized what he had done, they cursed Tantalus to stand in a shallow pool of water under a fruit tree. Anytime he would raise his hand for the fruit, the tree's branches would rise beyond his reach. And anytime he would bend down to drink the water, they would recede. The water would recede. Much the same way the chef has served the elites, the gods, and sacrificed his dream, his son, and now all food and drink is meaningless to him.
So we need to watch the movie in very, 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 very slow motion to catch all of this stuff.
Yeah, well, I was talking about it with my wife, and I was like, I kind of like the movie, but it kind of left me a little cold. Then we talked about it a little bit. I'm like, well, maybe that's the whole point, is that they basically sucked all the life and joy out of what is going out and dining with your friends and family and whoever, and going out for a really nice meal and getting shit-faced and just having a good time. And they took all the joy out of all that.
And I think in a funny way, that when I've heard people say, they've said, if you work in the industry, you'll love it. Because actually, if you've worked and you've seen the flip side,
right,
you recognize those characters very, very well. Whereas actually, if you're a hunter just going to a restaurant, you don't see that side of the kitchen hating you sometimes.
No substitutions.
Everyone's wanted to say that in a restaurant. I mean,
absolutely.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Gluten. I had one lady come in, and it was this fantastic. We did this restaurant on the roof with a gentleman called Pierre Kaufman, who's an incredible chef. Came back to do this restaurant in Selfridges, and this customer phoned up. She was like, "I can't have dairy. I can't have gluten. I can't have meat." Blah, blah. I mean, literally, the list was like 10 pages long. We had a chef there called Bruno Loubet, who's now in Australia, again, absolutely incredible chef. And he was like, don't worry, Dawn. He loved cooking vegetarian and vegan food. So he said, I'll take care of this. Did this beautiful vegan menu. She ate all the way through. Get to the end, get to dessert. He's done this incredible pineapple chili thing for her. She's like, do you know what? No, I'd like the chocolate fondant. I was like, well, you can't actually have that because it's got dairy and nuts and all that. She goes, oh, no, that's fine. And literally, I thought Bruno was going to come
out. What a joy. People are a joy.
I can't have any of that stuff, but I actually can.
I'm going off the diet tonight just for this.
I worked with a guy who had a peanut allergy. And everywhere we went, he would lean over and he'd ask the wait staff to ask about whether they cooked things in peanut oil. And we never knew what he was doing. He was just leaning over, like, hey, come here, and he has something. So then he tells us that he has to get, like, what are you always asking people? And he says, I have a peanut allergy. And a lot of restaurants will use peanut oil because you can fry anything in it. It doesn't retain the flavor of whatever's in there. And I need to know. And we were like, well, how much of an allergy do you have? And he's like, what? Do you want to give me peanuts until something happens? What's wrong with you? I was like, I'm just curious.
Well, we've been cooking your food in peanut oil for years.
Well, what happens?
We see all this TV we've seen over the years from Bourdain's early shows on, where you're seeing the back end of a restaurant, and you're also seeing the romanticized version of what it's like being in a restaurant. And for years, we here on these four little squares here, we've looked at, distilleries are so beautiful and romantic, and I would love to work at a distillery. And look what this tour guide is showing me. It's so amazing, and the smells are great. And you're pouring whiskey for all these people from Switzerland. Oh my God. But that's not really what a distillery is. And this kind of shows you, again, this is the back end of a restaurant. is work. It's really hard work. And we forget that when we're going into the restaurant and we spending our $50, $100, and we don't know what's going on behind there. It's a lot of work and there's a lot of stress, and it gets romanticized so much in culture, in pop culture, in articles and magazines and TV documentaries. We see this weird view of it that is nothing like really what it is. And you working in the industry, Don, you know it's not necessarily a joyful experience.
You know what? It's some of the best years of my life, but it's definitely some of the hardest years of my life.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about how to be a very, very strong person in myself, because you take shit. Damn, you take shit.
And being a woman, that's a whole different story, right?
But actually, it was never being a woman, funnily enough. It was
interesting.
I was a sommelier when I started. Actually, it was not being French.
Oh,
because at the time when
Mike,
I started, there was
chime in now. Go right ahead.
Nope.
No drink, Mike. I'm about to say something controversial.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to pour some more, but I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, I'm going to go through this whole bottle.
What was interesting is that genuinely, when I started, there was 4 female sommeliers in the UK. I was the 5th, and weirdly, very few people had an issue with us being women. I had one guy that was literally like, "Can I speak to the head sommelier?" And I was like, "That would be me." He was like the real head sommelier. I'd be like, "That would be me," and he just wouldn't let me recommend anything to him. So I said, "Look, sir, you just order what you want." And I overheard what he wanted, like what he was describing, and I knew the wine he'd picked he wasn't gonna like it. And I said to him, "Sir, I'm just letting you know, I'm not sure you're gonna enjoy that wine, but I'll pour it for you, whatever." He didn't like it. He calls me over. He goes, "I didn't like the wine." I said, "Okay, sir, let me pick the wine. And then if you don't like it, I'll pay for it. And I'll pay for the bottle you had before." You could see he was like to his friends, ha, ha, ha. Freaking loved it. He came and apologized to me afterwards.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, that's good.
And that was probably the worst I ever had. Like, okay, look, you have lecherous guests and all that stuff. But you know what? It's just drunk people. It's not like, you get it all the time.
So you're feeling right at home right now, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Fuck. God help me. Actually, I think what it was that I was working in very French kitchens in some instances. And actually not French kitchens, French front of house. Because the French do front of house so beautiful. Like they're trained to work front of house.
Right.
In the UK, like you're not trained in the same way. Actually, I came from an American culture, and I grew up in the States and moved over to the UK, and I was so different to what any person in the UK had ever come across, because I was just very friendly to guests. I was very, I'd come from service, customer. Like the French at the time were very French. Now that's changing a lot, and I have very, very many very good French friends who I love and adore, and there's some amazing French chefs. Let me just quantify that now before the whole of France comes after me, including my partner.
But my perception is that, I mean, at least there with those kind of jobs in food service, etc., it's not like a job to get to something else. It's not like I'm trying to be this, so I'm going to work in a restaurant while I try to make money. It's a career.
In France, 100%.
That's what I mean. It's a living. I mean, you are a professional waiter or a professional, maitre d', whatever. It's not like here where it's like, I used to work at a restaurant in Philadelphia, and it was like a Cajun restaurant. I guess it was a New Orleans style restaurant. It was called was it not Cafe Nola? What was it? Well, whatever. Not important. It's not there anymore. But everybody I worked with, it was right near like the University of the Arts, or the Philadelphia College of Art at the time is what it was, and they had performing arts people. The maitre d' was a ballerina, and she was just a maitre d' on the weekends, and she was going to school for ballet. There was a couple guys that were actors. There were a few other people that were, they were all just kind of biding their time and making some dollars to pay for college, pay for rent, pay for fun, pay for the cheap dive bar down the street where we went and got, shot in a beer for $5. The guys in the kitchen were professional, and the women in the kitchen were professional, but everybody else was kind of biding their time.
But I think that's changed. I think that's changed for everyone. I think, as the back of house has become more celeb focused, I think the front of house has started to, we see that with bartenders, very, very much so. Less with somms. There are some somms out there that I think, have done it, but maybe not so well. But I think, there's definitely a sense of professionalism that was never there, maybe even 10, 15, let's say 20 years ago when I kind of started in the UK for sure. And that kind of makes it exciting, because I think the more professional you are in the front of house. I always say, it's not about the chef. Never about the chef. I'm now going to be attacked by many chefs. Because actually, what's the thing you remember the most?
The
If
waiter.
you go to the top restaurant in the world and you have average service, it is no longer the top restaurant.
Right.
If you go to an okay restaurant and have freaking awesome service, it becomes your favorite restaurant.
Yeah,
Right.
you go back.
I agree.
Not about the chef.
I would be very happy if I got average service. I'm not sure where to get that from.
Mike gets no respect. He's the Rodney Dangerfield of diners.
I've gone to a restaurant and it's taken an hour and a half to bring the food out. And my children will say, please go to the bathroom because as soon as you leave the table, the food comes out.
I am
So-
never going anywhere near a restaurant.
Never go out to eat with me ever. So one day I was not able to go to the same restaurant that took an hour and a half. At the 40-minute mark, the maitre d' came out and apologized to my wife and comped the meal because of how long dinner took. And I was like, I've been to the same place. And it's taken an hour and a half and no one said anything. Comped the meal, gave them dessert. They're like, you should never come out to eat with us ever again.
I mean, just as a question, why did you keep going back to that restaurant?
No, it's every restaurant. It doesn't matter. I've gone out with Angelo. Angelo will be like, well, we'll do a quick lunch. This place is great. In 20 minutes, we'll have our meal. 40 minutes, lunch comes out, and he's like, it's you. You were where service goes to die. You're just the worst. They see you sitting at the table, and they go, nah, who cares? I'm going on break.
He's eaten
Who
before.
cares?
He doesn't need more food.
Okay, that guy looks like he's fine. He won't care.
He's got a whiskey.
He
He'll
won't care.
keep.
He's still going to give me 20% because he's a moron.
Ooh, la la la. Oh, oh.
Can we talk about the Philly cheesesteak? Because
What
I
about
like a Philly cheesesteak.
You do or you don't?
I do.
It's the roll.
Have you been to Philadelphia?
The roll, yeah.
It's the roll.
Where have you had a cheesesteak from?
Oh God, this was like 200 years ago.
Did you
so
go to
I-
the place, the Pats and the Genos? These
No,
places?
No.
This was like 30 years ago.
Well, they've been around for probably 50 years at least.
It's
Maybe. And we went to some.
I grew up around the
It's-
corner from there.
it's the roll.
Literally around the corner from. Like I could see when I was at my parents' house. It was a 3-story townhome, whatever you would call them. And from the back window, you could actually see two cheesesteak places and the line around the corner, and it's just terrible.
Where's the best Philly cheesesteak then?
My house or Mike's house. So just come over with us.
Yeah.
We've got whiskey.
Mike,
And,
how long is it going to get served at your house? Is it the same?
no, he's
person
quick.
you go to a restaurant?
I actually make the food quickly.
yes.
There's no waiting.
Because the
Yes.
people here to eat are angry if you don't feed them fast enough.
I think the Philly cheesesteak is overrated. The pork sandwich, the Philly roast pork with broccoli rabe and provolone. Now that's a sandwich.
And some red peppers. That's,
Okay, can we talk about favorite sandwiches? I don't know where
I
I'm going.
love sandwiches. I love a sandwich.
There's nothing better than a great sandwich.
It's fantastic. See, the Earl of Sandwich. Thank you.
See, that's the double cheeseburger that they have in the movie.
Oh,
What could you go
Oh.
for? I could go for. Could you make me a cheeseburger?
yes. And I fall in love with the smash burger.
Does that
Love
come with
smash burger.
fries?
I genuinely love a BLT.
A BLT is very good. A club sandwich,
It's a great
also
sandwich.
delightful.
Club sandwich.
By the way, club sandwich. The letters actually stand for something.
No, that's the BLT.
No, I think Club has it.
Club sandwich
Club is
also. It's
Hey.
like chicken
Chicken
and lettuce
lettuce.
under bacon.
I think that's it. That's it.
I think that's it. I was like, what?
That is mind blowing.
I don't know if it's true or if it's an Instagram thing. I don't know. But somebody
I'm
posted it was
Googling.
chicken and lettuce under bacon.
So that really goes back to the essence of this movie.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
so? If you consider sandwiches, we love putting stuff between two pieces of bread.
2 pieces of really good bread, or maybe not even great bread.
I mean, bread is amazing.
Bread's great, but
You get no bread.
no bread. You get the dips. No bread.
They didn't get the best part of the meal.
Yeah.
It's the peasant food, no bread.
You go to a Belgian restaurant and you order a plate of mussels. And what's the best part about the mussels? Not the mussels, the bread to dip into the sauce that the mussels came in.
I mean, the butter helps.
Wow. Of course.
I mean,
Well, that's
no
all part of the bread.
Right.
without-
That's
It's
that's
all
the
part
whole.
of the bread.
So the club sandwich may have originated at the Union Club of New York.
Ah.
Ah,
So why do they call it a club sandwich? Oh, now it's many different places now. Now it's the Saratoga House. I mean, Wikipedia and Tortellini and Co. Oh, but acronym. Here we go. Guys, the club in club sandwich isn't an acronym. I think we don't believe this, and we go with.
we make it our own.
I prefer chicken lettuce under bacon as my explanation.
You know
Like
the
it.
phrase, of course. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
That's right.
Legend.
Print the
Print the
legend. That's right.
That's what marketing's about, isn't it?
Exactly.
Sounds-
Exactly.
Really, the essence of this movie is about breaking down all of these things that food culture has become back to the essence of eating, which is two pieces of bread and something in between them. Right?
Brisket.
Mm-hmm.
Some nice brisket.
Sure.
Happiness. Even a bacon sandwich.
I eat taco stands, taco trucks a lot, and it's street food. And you guys said that the best cheesesteaks are at your house. It's two pieces of bread that you guys know how to make. You know how to make that the insides, and you get the two pieces of bread, and boom, you've got this meal. It's real. Ultimately, it's street food.
Here we go. Here's the marriage of two cultures: Philly culture and I guess Italian American culture. The cheesesteak stromboli,
There you go.
Oh,
right?
now you're just toying with me.
That's
No oregano.
That's the thing.
No oregano.
No oregano. No
No
oregano.
oregano.
You-
Just some
you got
sautéed
issues?
onions, some
No oregano.
sautéed mushroom, American cheese, or whatever cheese you like. Some
Maybe
nice
peppers. Throw
some
peppers
good,
in
like
there.
maybe some prime rib, maybe a little prime rib cheesesteak.
And I'll go farther, and I'll say that the downfall of food culture has been the deconstruction of the sandwich. It's taking what's inside and putting it into little places and trying to magnify them more than they are. And all of a sudden, you've got places like this restaurant in the movie, in the menu, that have taken the essence of beautiful eating from cultures all over the world and fucked it all up.
That is your first F-bomb in 52 podcasts.
That's why you can't have cognac anywhere else in the world, because that would be deconstruction of cognac.
That's
Ah.
right. Look at that. Look at what we did.
And actually, you know what's become my new favorite also? And we could thank the Spaniards and the Portuguese for this. Some tin sardines on a crusty bread with lettuce, tomatoes, some onion, hot
All day
peppers, a
long.
little mayo.
All
Ah.
day.
I'm an anchovy girl. Anchovy.
Me
butter.
too.
Oh, love anchovies too. It's all good.
I have to eat that sandwich outside. I'm not allowed to make that sandwich. I can only hit during the warm weather.
Hey,
Otherwise, I apparently the house stinks and I've ruined everything.
So in the UK, one of the favorite things when you're in school is like the really shitty bread, like the thin stuff that no one should
Yeah.
really eat, with loads of butter, and then crisps or like French fries or chips in the sandwich.
Because you got to give it texture because the bread failed.
Texture.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Mouthfeel.
Texture.
Now,
You get a mouthfeel.
Mouthfeel.
You get
It's like in
a
the
really
movie.
good bread. You don't need the crisp because the bread worked.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny how you could argue that this happens in the spirits world too, with whiskey and the pretentiousness of these categories.
I like to call it the douchification of
The
everything.
douchification of these categories is
Yes.
it gets to be too much at some point, right? And people forget what the essence of these things are, and a lot of it's marketing.
Most marketeers should be shot.
Yes,
This is fact.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's about selling a product, right? So
it's selling a product and
you gotta
creating
build a mystique, you
and
gotta
creating
make
a
it
story that
desirable,
doesn't really
interesting.
exist, or
Right.
magnifying a story that does exist. And she was a little old lady who made whiskey in her backyard, and she had 3 legs or 1 leg or whatever,
No legs.
no legs, 1 arm, and she
No legs
still
works better
herself.
from a marketing
Hey, one
perspective.
question: eye patch or no eye patch? Eye patch or no eye
Obviously,
patch?
obviously, an eye patch
Eye
over
patch.
both eyes.
Gotta have an eye patch.
Both that, yes.
But, I think when I ever, I get obviously offered a hell of a lot of product to taste, and everyone always wants to come taste with me. And sometimes I always say no. No one can come taste. You have a product, you send it in, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes people are like, well, I'm not going to send it in. We feel that, we need to explain the story behind it. And my answer is, if you need to talk about your product to make it taste good, it's not good enough to be listed.
Yeah.
Well, you're mean.
I like it.
Oh, yeah.
I like
I'm
it.
I mean, you're not wrong, but you're mean.
No, it's true.
I am.
I respect that. I'm a waffler. I'm like, well, okay, maybe it wasn't so bad.
No,
No.
I think that's true. And we've gotten to the point where the myth has grown bigger than the thing, and in so much of food and drink culture. And
Oh, it's everything. It's not just that, but still.
you're right. And this movie kind of really just magnifies what that's all about. It's actually kind of disgusting.
All this talk, what it did, it just elevated the movie for me. It just brought it up a notch.
We can talk about that for a moment. I loved it. When you asked, was it you, Andrew? I think you asked me if I liked it.
Yeah.
And I think you asked me in a way that you thought I wasn't going to like it.
I wasn't sure. Because sometimes I'll give you something and...
Yeah, I really loved this movie. It's a movie I would go back to. And now after talking about it some more here with you guys, I think there's so much more underlying in it.
Right.
That there's a lot of things that are going on that it's not for the general public, maybe. I want to see all that stuff. And maybe because we are in this little wacky world, just not like Dawn, but the three of us are.
Well, Dawn we're adjacent. We're like in the world adjacent. Yeah,
we're like Dawn adjacent. And
if there's a Venn diagram, we're just like on the cusp of the. Yeah,
we're like 6 or 7 neighborhoods to the east of Dawn. But,
right.
From our neighborhood, we can take a train to where Dawn is. And
we're at 1 degree of separation from Dawn's world.
That one.
Well, it's the 6 degrees separation, right?
That's
yeah,
one.
She's the 1 degree. Here's the world. Here's Dawn. We're us. We're 1 degree.
So we're 2 from Sue Kinder.
Right. That's right. We see this from a distance, but we know what's going on here. We know this fantasy world that's happening and that's being sold to us, and it's really not reality, I guess, is what I'm saying. And this movie kind of does that. I love it. As much as I get sucked into all those documentaries and I love reading about all these new restaurants, in my head, I know it's stupid.
Yeah.
It's idiotic. What's the food taste like? I don't need to hear about this guy that's beating up his employees to make this thing. And it's stupid. It's silly.
And I think that when it comes down to it, all that spirits are, all that whiskey is, all that cognac is, all that rum is, it's distilled flavor.
Yes.
And I think at the end of the day, I don't think anyone really 99.9% of people don't give a toss what soil it was grown on, or
will it get me drunk?
They want a fun story. Yeah, but they want a fun story and they want to know what it tastes like because they want to know.
Or they want to have a drink and create their own fun stories.
Yeah.
So at the Cognac show, do you have non-cognac producers of any kind?
So yes, we do. We have Armagnac and we have Calvados. So we made the decision a couple of years back to we do guest spirits. We do it in whiskey show as well. And we just decided actually I'm a massive Calvados fan. And as I already said, I love Armagnac. So yeah, we've brought in some producers that we bring over. Also bring in some Pinot de Charente, which of course is the sort of unfermented wine with brandy added back in, which is just a delicious aperitivo drink. So yeah, I think it's about, for us, I think there's a real interest in French spirits, full stop, actually. I mean, Chartreuse has gone absolutely insane in the UK. We're seeing a rise in kind of all these marques and eau de vie, and I think France, 40 whiskey distilleries in the last 20 years or something. It's insane. Like, France is on fire.
That's crazy. So while we're on this topic about the show itself, so that's coming up. It's when this podcast comes out, the show will be over. But it's a big deal. It's become a thing, right, for you and the Whiskey Exchange, right? Glazier's Hall, Central London, a couple of days, right? And you got seminars as well as the tasting hall.
We do talks, tastings. We have a cocktail bar, as I said. Bar Lucille comes over from Cognac and does a pop-up doing some sort of interesting, fun cocktails. Yeah, we have over 33 producers, I think, in total. So we pour over 100 different brands. And yeah, I think we're doing about 6 master classes, including a look at some sort of Martell through the ages, looking at some really old Armagnacs from De Rose. I'm doing a blind tasting, so I'm challenging everyone to do to kind of let their inhibitions or their thoughts go and look at cognac.
Will you be blind or will they be blind?
I'll be blind by the end.
Yeah, blind, stinking drunk.
How long has the Cognac show been going on?
If you include our online ones when we did over COVID, I would say we've been going, this must be actually our 7th year, I would say, because we had 2 in COVID.
Are you seeing a whiskey contingent coming to the show these days?
It's really interesting, like we work with a lot of journalists in the UK and a lot of whiskey bloggers and stuff, and we're definitely I'm seeing a lot of my whiskey customers from Whiskey Show and things coming in now. And I think, we talked about this earlier, whiskey is becoming unaffordable. And a lot of these other aged spirits like rum, like cognac, like armagnac, they're still beautifully affordable. Like if you have a 20-year-old whiskey now, let's take our little friends Talisker 18, Dalmore 18. I am calling them out because they are ripping you off. It is the same liquid, and yet they are doubling, tripling in pricing. And I have said that to them. I'm not afraid to say it on a live podcast. Well, not live podcast.
Cards and letters, Dawn Davis, Davis cards and letters.
It makes me angry that they're fine. Don't release as much. Of course, we understand the costs that are happening in distilleries right now. We 100% understand the cost of it. Barrels are going up. Grains harder to get hold of. Electricity, or if you're direct fired, is insane right now. I mean, Glenfarclas is it's crazy. They're bills now. But at the end of the day, there is a limit. Like, I am sorry, you're taking the mick out of your customer at some point because you want to approach China, or you want to go into a luxury market, so you reposition the brand. No, it's wrong. But I still think you can get a 20-year-old Hein or a 20-year-old De Rose or whatever, and you're still paying sub 100.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you where my loyalty is, and it's not with the people that are trying to rip off the consumer and the people that have been following them for years. I think that's also a thing. We all understand prices go up, but they do not triple and they do not quadruple.
And I think we're seeing that with a lot of things. When we first started doing this, Yamazaki was $60. It's if you can find the Yamazaki 12, it's $200. Even the
Nika from the
Nika from the barrel, same thing. Even if
how much is that now?
If you can find
it's like 40.
Yeah,
it was that's not bad.
Pounds, sorry.
Yeah, so that's not bad.
It's a lot more than it was.
But it was like 20
and even like the society bottlings, it used to be, you get a 13, 14-year-old whiskey for under $100, or 85 pounds or whatever that is, and now it's almost $10 a year. Where you look at it and you go, it's just escalated, and you're like, well, it didn't change. It's the same age. You didn't do anything different. Why is it so much more money?
And I do understand that there are cause and effects from COVID and stuff like that, but I think there's a certain justification in price rises that you get. Like the price rises that just come through from Glenfarclas, I do understand, I get it because of the cost of the gas. But I think there's some point where you're just like, that's marketing repositioning to go after a market because they've seen someone else doing it.
There's a Moneyball aspect to it, which is a baseball reference here in the States, that you look for the places that other people aren't looking, right?
So high value.
Whiskey's gone.
Low cost.
Right, exactly. Whiskey's gone up crazy. So then we've kind of focused on rum. Well, rum's getting expensive. So, hey, what about mezcal? Or what about cognac? Right? And so and then maybe by the time this circles around, whiskey's come down in price 5, 6, 7 years from now, maybe, hopefully. I think there's the shopper, the consumers are going to drive this ultimately.
Oh, they have to.
Right?
100%.
So,
because, what is market value? What someone's willing to pay.
That's right. So if we don't want to spend $200 for a bottle of whiskey or $150 for a bottle of whiskey,
don't buy it.
Don't buy it, and then prices will come down ultimately.
Well, wait. Right. How pretty is the bottle? That might wait.
Well, no. Then there's mine.
No. Never mind.
Yes, the market's gone nuts in so many areas, and we have the control over it. We being the consumer.
Absolutely.
And we can't say no in a lot of ways.
And that's where I think the buyer, someone like me, has to be the gatekeeper. And me saying things like I say and calling it out so the consumer is hearing it. And me saying to brands, I'm not buying it because it's in a heavy bottle.
Like you were talking about the producers that insist on meeting with you in person to explain the product. But ultimately, if they win you over and you buy 20 cases of something, you're the one stuck with it that has to sell it.
It's got to leave your
Right.
shelf, otherwise this
So
failed.
you are the middle person, if you will.
Yeah, and yeah, I think the more that I can, as a buyer, influence what's going into the market or influence what producers are thinking, because in the UK I'm a powerful buyer when it comes to spirits, and that's got to be something
And
that has
to a certain extent, are you finding that you're not finding things, but you're able to go and take some of the smaller producers and bring them more to the forefront because they're no longer contributing to the blends, to somebody else's product? They're trying to roll it out themselves. So either from whiskey aspect or rums or cognacs or something, you're able to pick up something. It's like a diamond in the rough where no one knew who this was before, and you're able to find it.
100%. Like the Pasquet that you're drinking right now, Valentin, another amazing one. Look what's happening in the whiskey world from a global perspective. There is some awesome kit coming out. New Zealand Thompson's. I love that whiskey. Australia, there's so many more interesting stages. America, like I've just called in some samples thanks to you guys for some people.
I was just going to ask, could you hook up? Did you?
Well, if it ever gets through customs, I might get some.
Oh, okay.
But
Who did you talk? Well, we could talk about that online. We can get into specifics offline.
Yep.
But yeah, I think there's so many more. We're at an age for whiskey, for rum. Actually, there's so much more interesting things coming down the line. Like are we having to rely on the old stalwarts?
I was going to say that when you were talking about all these guys that are basically price gouging to a degree. There's so many smaller producers. Maybe they're not making a 20-year-old whiskey or a 10-year-old whiskey, and it's a 4-year-old whiskey. That doesn't mean it's bad. And if anything, find the ones that are good and promote them, and hopefully they'll hang around.
Age ain't nothing but a number.
And the move to no age statement, I think, is kind of, at least with us, I think, has changed our perception, where it doesn't have to be a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old whiskey anymore.
I think that's why they made a mistake. I think they actually should have said it's a 3-year-old.
Yeah, and some do, and I'm fine.
And we had Dave on for a brief hello, and the stuff that he sent to us was fantastic. Where I didn't know much about Canadian whiskey because down here you didn't get really good Canadian whiskey. You get the the large giant brand tells you what Canadian whiskey is, and it's really good.
You know how Mike liked it? He stopped calling it Narnia. Now he calls it Canadian whiskey.
He actually says Canada.
I still think it might be make believe, but I'm not really sure.
That's only because they won't let you on the border to show you the reality.
That's not true. I've been over the border once or twice. They didn't see me there.
Have you?
They didn't
they
see
sent
me
you
there.
back. And they sent you back.
Any final thoughts on this movie?
Do actually, I think what we just said there, that it is a Willy Wonka movie.
So Roald Dahl could have written.
Absolutely. I think it really, for me, had so many touches back. Because if you read Wonka, the Willy Wonka, you read it, there is so much in there that's not a children's book, in the same way. It's a fable. It's like going back to the deadly sins. It's the same as in Wonka. And I think that's where I kind of was left with that movie, that actually it was telling a story that's been told so many times. It's a story to warn and remind people that actually the basics are where we need to look first. That shut you all up.
No, I agree with you.
I thought there was more.
Yeah, no, on a very basic level, it's a very funny movie. I laughed a lot. On a very serious level, it talks about some very important topics that we see in culture at large. And on some sort of other micro level, it talks about the way people are treated in their lives, like our chef, and how he's a product of his environment. He's a product of what he's gone through. And all of the characters are. They've kind of sucked into this culture, and they're paying for it now. And there's a lot of levels to this movie that are not obvious to some at first glance. I think we've all, with Angie's little factoids for the day, we've learned a little bit more that was going on behind the scenes, underlying the basic story. So it's really a fascinating movie on a lot of levels. I loved it. Just thinking about it, I love it even more.
I really appreciated the cast because when you think about it, it's almost like a play where the back of where the cooks is the back of the theater, and they're at the front of the theater and at the front of the stage, and they all have their little like spotlight vignette. This is the thing they're working on, and what struck me was so many of the people in the cast have actually been Tony winners or Tony nominees, and like you need me for 10 minutes to say one word, great. Like Judith Light is a tremendous actress, she really is. She has very little to do in this, and at the very end she's the one who tells her,
nuts.
Go, run, get out, like it's too late for us, run, just get out of here. Where just that little tiny bit was like that was enough, almost she's seeking redemption at this point. Where I thought that you went back and forth. John Leguizamo playing the washed up actor, who's name dropping, and he doesn't know who any of these people are. He was just tremendous. Another Broadway actor, which I didn't know until I Googled him. Ray Fiennes was shockingly good. Like it was just unbelievable how horrible really he is as a person in this. But just like, I'm cutting everybody off. You're all done.
And final thoughts on the movie?
I really like that they skewered the s'mores because I really dislike s'mores.
I agree with you. Yeah.
They are the worst.
I like the deconstruction of a s'more more than I like a s'more.
Yeah, I'll eat a marshmallow. I'll eat a piece of chocolate. I'll eat a graham cracker.
S'mores are fantastic if you
but-
have small children and a chimney outside, because you get to sit outside and drink by a fire, and they are pacified. But I love what he says.
And they can make a mess outside.
I love what he says. The most offensive assault on the human palate ever contrived. Okay,
Correct.
that's fair. That seems fair.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
But you know what I do like? I do like a Pop-Tart s'more. They're really good.
Wow, interesting.
Because that puts it all together and it keeps it together and it just melts perfectly and it's nice.
Back to the sandwich.
That's true.
It's all
That's
about
the
sandwich.
That's true.
Right?
A couple pieces
Right.
of bread.
I love a
Cheese
sandwich.
in the middle.
And it's all about the construction. You
That's
have to
right.
construct it properly.
That's
You
right.
have to lay the meat in properly. Finely shredded lettuce.
Yes.
Nice slice of tomato.
Texture.
Thinly sliced
Meat
onions.
texture.
Maybe some hot peppers.
We need a podcast about sandwiches.
Love sandwiches.
Yes.
Love them. Love them.
One show, one sandwich.
One show, one
Is that okay?
sandwich.
Yes.
We can do that.
I like it.
A one pot sandwich. It's all good.
Well, this has been just so fun. We've learned about cognac. We've learned about the menu. We've learned about food culture.
Yeah, but you know what the most important thing is?
What?
We got to spend 2 hours with Dawn Davis.
She is the queen of Cotswold. So
She's the queen. Yes. Yes. Nothing happens in the Cotswolds without going through Dawn first. It's true. No mail gets delivered. No milk gets delivered. No roads get built. No thatch gets replaced.
No, thatch gets thatched.
she has
Yes.
both the iron hand and the velvet glove. So truly a despot.
And I can make Mike spit.
Oh,
Yes, it's true. She's the queen of thatch.
I can't go to your Cognac show because I would literally be just spitting all over everyone as you kept saying things. They'd be like, "What is wrong with that guy?"
Well, Dawn, we cannot thank you enough for coming back on, and this was so fun. And I've learned about this thing called cognac, and I didn't know all these things, and now I'm really happy because I'm gonna plow through half of this bottle tonight, I think, because it's so easy drinking.
I love chatting with you guys, and it's always an absolute joy.
And most important of all, no Hennessy.
No Hennessy.
No Hennessy.
You know, right now I'm going to be killed by about 5 different brands, but you know, that's
Not yet.
fine.
It will, when it gets released, not yet.
So the big four, they control so much of the market. In terms of their actual representation of like the houses that make all this, are they really that large a percentage, or is it just what gets shipped out to the U.S.?
Yeah,
Really?
huge. I mean, Hennessy is genuinely about 85%.
And then like Martel and Courvoisier and the other guys, they're much smaller percentages.
I can't remember. I think it's Hennessy, Courvoisier, Martel, and
Wow.
Remy. I can't remember the exact change. I mean, I know Remy's really growing in the
Wow.
US at the moment, but yeah. But there's so much more to cognac than the big boys.
And the cognac show, cognac show, it comes up in 2 weeks. This
2 weeks.
podcast will be over, but next year it'll be back in London,
100%.
and
Yeah.
Dawn will be running the show as usual. She's the chef and the maitre d' of that whole thing, right?
And you do
Absolutely.
several shows a year. Is that what you were saying? There's 4 shows, right?
Yeah. So we have rum show in July. We'd love to see anyone over from the
I'd love
States
to go to that.
at that. And then we have whiskey show, which one of the biggest in the world in October, the first weekend of October. And then we have champagne show, if you like a little sparkle in your life, in November.
Will there be Prosecco there?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay. It won't be.
Don't ask her.
No.
Well, that was a bit definitive. I was waiting for her to clap her hands and say something about it.
Only certain bubbles are allowed. We only have certain bubbles.
I think she just made you a marshmallow stole and perhaps a little chocolate hat to wear with that question.
We need to get on your buddy one time, Mr. Abbott. That would be fun.
Yes.
We need to get Billy on and talk.
You know what? If you want to talk about sandwiches, Billy loves a sandwich.
We need to have a sandwich Star Wars talk with Mr. Abbott.
Oh my God.
Because he's Star Wars nerd, right? Yeah.
Oh my God.
That would be fun.
Literally.
Oh, we could talk Andor.
5 hours minimum.
We can talk Andor. Oh, yeah.
I'll talk Andor.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I tell you,
or Mandalorian. A Mandalorian club sandwich.
See, and they're both Star Wars adjacent, which I like.
Star Wars adjacent.
Star Wars.
Correct. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Wrap this up. Come on, man.
This was wonderful. Don, thank you so much. The What We Watch When We Drink podcast has done it again over many countries, too, and many time zones, 3. Don, thank you so much. This was great. You guys get out there, buy cognac, go to London, go to the Cognac Show, and you can download this wonderful podcast coming up very soon. And,
yeah, Dawn buys first round, by the way. Dawn's buying first
of course.
100%.
Go to her booth.
Hennessy for everybody. Hennessy for everybody.
That's right.
Oh.
Of course. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Don. We will talk soon. Don't go anywhere, Don. We'll talk to you in a minute.
Hold on, I'm ending the broadcast.
Hit the button.
I am. I'm trying to hit the button. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Audible, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can also find us on boozdancing.com. And if you have any questions, comments, show or drink suggestions, email us at boozdancing@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Do you have your little vocal exercises, Aaron, before we start?
La 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 la.
Loose lips sink ships. Loose lips sink ships.
Is it cognac or cognac? Is it cognac or cognac?
Uh-huh.
Cognac.
Cognac.
Cognac. Is that right?
Are you cognizant about cognac? Are you cognizant about cognac?
In the cognac
There you
setting.
go.
Let's not
All right.
upset every Frenchman in the world yet.
Ah, why not? Why not? They upset everybody.
Cognac.
Is it really cognac? I've been always saying cognac. All right, I learned something already. I'm
All
smart.
right.
I'm much smarter now.
All right, Dawn, we're gonna put you on mute, and we're gonna get this show on the road.